fire history studies allow us to understand what fire was occurring and where and when and how much was occurring on the landscape. Until 1920, they found that the mean fire return interval was 3 to 5 years across the landscape. After 1920, there was no fire. The consequences are profound.
Welcome back to the Ozark podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Veet, joined as always by co-host of the show and my good buddy, Mr. Kyle Plunkett.
Yes, sir.
How are you?
Man, I'm doing just great.
Good.
I'm excited for this episode. It's one that we've dabbled in, we've talked about, we've had people who know more than we know talk about, and it's also something that years and years and years ago, like right when we were starting to really kind of dabble in the conservation world, kind of blew our minds a little bit. And so, how about you introduce our guests and our topic and what we're going to be talking about about today? But I'm pretty fired up for this one.
Yeah. Oh, fun there. Fired up.
Yep.
There's the giveaway.
That was unintentional.
I like it. So here's the thing. This, you're right. When we first started talking about this or started learning about this opened up my world completely. And I feel like a lot of people listening opened up their world of like, wait, fire? How did the Ozarks used to look? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be diving into prescribed fire, fire on the landscape, the history of the Ozarks, how things used to look, why it's been removed, and then what we lose without having fire on the landscape. And so to talk with us through that story and that journey, we have with us a very special guest, McRee Anderson of the Nature Conservancy. McRee is he's been doing this for his whole career, focused on burning and managing properties, and he is now the Interior Highlands and Fire Restoration Director.
That's fine.
Program Director.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. So first of all, McRee, thanks for coming on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to have me.
Yeah.
Good to have you.
Good to have you. I'll say it.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. You don't claim to be an expert. I know you were saying that before we started the show, but in the amount of time that you've been doing it and the sheer number of acres and properties that you've burned and managed, in my mind, you are the expert in the Ozarks and really across the world. I know you travel a lot to Africa, and you've just spent a lot of time in Tanzania and burning huge chunks of land, millions of acres at a time, and you've also helped the state of Arkansas and the Ozarks develop their burn programs and things like that and write plans. So tell me just a little bit, like, what has kept you in burning? Why are you so interested in fire?
Yeah, fire's, we all say we're students of fire. And, when you set a match and start a fire in a place, there's something about it, right? There's some connection there, spiritual connection, whatever you want to call it. But, fire is a tool that we've been dealing with, for thousands and thousands of years. And it's just something that is so core, primal, and organic, and such a change agent on the landscape that, and it's an inspiration for people and it's scary. So it has all these things that you want to, both be a student of it and learn from it. And every place you go is different and has unique challenges or opportunities with good fire and bad fire. So
yeah, there's a lot to fire. I've had some fires start to get away from me, and I get really scared really quickly. And so there's that piece of it. But then like it's something that I think a lot of people have their own ideas about, whether it's constructive, is it a damaging thing? Is it good? Is it bad? And there's a lot more to that. But before we get into that, I think really, like, if you're listening and you have ever been curious about fire, this is going to be the episode. Like, you're going to want to listen to this one. So let's start with just history of fire in the Ozarks. Okay. What did this place used to look like, and how significant was fire as a part of the ecological management, or just the natural ecosystem that was happening here hundreds, thousands of years ago? Yeah,
so basically back when I was hired here in 2001, a lot of fire science and fire ecology was still building momentum. And in the Ozarks, there wasn't a lot of well-known, broad-based studies to understand like what the fire footprint was and kind of how to manage land, okay? And so, for an example, when I started working here, the entire national forests only burned about 3,000 acres a year. And now they burn about 400,000.
Wow.
But they do that because we now understand the historical role of fire and how our ecosystems function and how all our plant communities and wildlife need that kind of condition that fire creates. And so, yeah, it's fascinating when when Europeans first got here um, in the early, well, 15, 16, 1700s, but European settlement in late 17, early 1800s. Um, yeah, they inherited a managed landscape. And what does that mean? Well, it means that there was indigenous peoples here for thousands of years. We know that in the historical record.
Mm-hmm.
Here on Lee Creek, on the U.S. Forest Service land, they've got archaeological digs that show humans down there in caves and managing land 12,000 years ago.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, and I am not an expert in any of this, but I've had to learn it through my work and my understanding of how our ecosystems work and function, and so we can make the best informed decisions to basically build out a resilient ecosystem for future generations.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a managed landscape when Europeans first got here.
I think that's something that maybe a lot of people don't think about. You think about and of course, we go back to European settlement because we have written historical documents and things like that. But you would think that, people come over here and it's the wild, right?
Yeah.
Like they're stepping out into the wild. It's the Wild West. It's the frontier.
Yeah.
And it's a mindset shift to be like, how wild was it? Like, what role did Native Americans, did indigenous people play in managing and actually being a part of nature? We talk about that a lot of like, it's so easy today to think of ourselves humans as separate from nature and like nature's over there and it's outside of town and you go to nature and we're humans and we live in cities and civilization. But it's like these indigenous people, they were a part of nature and they were very much in the ecosystem.
Yeah. So if you go back and think about how we got here, fire history studies allow us to understand, what fire was occurring and where and when and how much was occurring on the landscape. And so once those early fire history studies came out, you can date trees, shortleaf pine particularly, back for, we have tree cookies where they cut and make samples, and then you date the scars of a fire that sweeps across the landscape. So back when it first started, we helped researchers find like 8,000 tree stumps or sampling posts of shortleaf pine to where they looked at the fire scars. And they found that the mean fire return interval was 3 to 5 years across the landscape from 1600 until like 1800.
So they were tracking trees that were that old.
Yeah.
And able to say every 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
The fire would come through here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Most likely a prescribed fire from Native people.
Yep.
And that's how they were managing.
And so that's just one aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
So now we have fire science that tells us, okay, fire was sweeping across this landscape pretty frequently, and not all fire scars a tree. And so it could have been even more frequent.
Okay.
But these were surface ground fires moving through open woodland conditions. Okay, and now how do we know the open woodlands condition thing? That's a whole other aspect. So started piecing all this stuff together. The open woodland condition comes from the government land office records. So at the time of settlement, when Arkansas became a state, they sent surveyors across all of Arkansas sections, quarter sections, and would map the vegetation across the landscape. And they would go to a witness tree on every quarter section and record stuff they saw down the line for the next mile to all the way through the state. And so it took a while for researchers to kind of organize that and piece it together. But yeah, I mean, I was trying to do a few of my notes here because it's just inferred knowledge that I have back in my mind. But it showed that, the government land office records, analyzing that tree data, that tree density data, the species composition of these ecosystems, and it goes back. So it's basically, an open woodland. 60% of the interior highlands was open woodland savanna. 40 to 30% of it was something else. Probably 20% of it, the highlands, the upper Boston Mountains was like closed canopy. And then the river valleys as well, or river corridors. So
I hear a lot of people talk about the Ozarks as savanna and open woodland and that kind of thing. Do you mind, just so I get a clear picture in my head, kind of describing each of those from River Valley up to the tops? Like, what would that look like? What was kind of the managed inheritance, I guess, the European settlement kind of stepped into?
yeah, I think it's a mixture of really open grasslands, prairies, what we would call. They called them barrens in the historical record. To grading into woodlands, post oak, blackjack oak kind of woodlands where there's scattered trees. They even estimated 30 to 70 trees per acre, which you hear the term park-like all the time, which in my mind that's true. And when I go out globally and go into these woodlands in Tanzania and these Miombo woodlands and with the grassy understory and dappled sunlight in the ground, I'm like, yeah, this is what the Ozark used to look like. And then you can grade into these riverine corridors where the fires don't really get into there too much because it's more shaded and mesic. And then the uplands where it's steep, topographical roughness kind of slows fire spread. And so fires, don't burn hot on the north-facing slopes and back down at night. And so you'd have a thicker type of canopy structure in the rougher country of the highlands. So
No, it really does.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get I can see it in my mind. And I guess we've seen some properties where they're managing for that.
Yeah. They've actually done it and recreated what it used to look like.
Yeah. The other thing I'd say is that, through this fire history study is really cool that all the way up until 1920, they had fire history through all the trees. After 1920, there was no fire. They had turned it off. They had turned off fire in 1920 and never had it again.
Okay.
So now we inherit 80 years of fire suppression.
Yeah. So 1920, what's happening? Like what turns off the fire? What's going on there where fire disappears from the landscape?
Well, it took a long time
Okay.
to get completely there. But basically settlement, the structure of government, the building of roads, the development of the conservation movement, a variety of things, moving indigenous peoples out, settlers not allowing to have open range cattle. A lot of the settlers burned the woods for, once all the changes happened and the Europeans were here, they changed the fire regime. So each culture had a different fire regime. The indigenous cultures like to kind of burn from the historical records, from what I read, in the growing season, summer, fall, and then the Europeans tended to burn, for grazing browse in the woods for their livestock. So that would be dormant season burning, opening up the forest, that kind of thing.
And so like maybe even before the European settlers were here, why were indigenous people burning? Like, why was that a part of their management practices? What were what were their goals? What do you think?
I don't know. I philosophize on it all the time, but I also have inferred knowledge of cultures that I work with in different parts of the world. And so basically, you're maximizing your lifestyle in any way, shape, or form. You're maximizing your opportunities to, harvest animals, harvest honey, for security, for travel. If you set a fire and it blackens off 20 square miles and you need to go 40 square miles on the other side, you can walk through that corridor without any animal. You can have good visibility. So ticks are a big reason, communities and people that live off the land and around the land, especially with wild game and cattle or free-range animals, they do a lot of burning. Yeah, to reduce tick populations.
That makes sense, and it makes sense why it seems like we have more ticks than ever today, and you hear more and more about alpha-gal and diseases like that being spread to people. We know people who have alpha-gal, close friends of ours, family, and it just it seems like they're everywhere. Yeah, and it seems like a good burn would be a good thing to get rid of some of these ticks. Yeah, and it actually does suppress the tick population.
There is a study that says that it does in Florida.
Okay.
After 10 years of burning, you reduce the tick populations by an X%. I can't remember what that is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so in the 1920s, fire really starts disappearing rapidly off of the landscape.
And you said it's a multi-tiered thing. That's government, that's homesteading, that's roads, that's infrastructure, that's...
Yep. And the invention of Smokey the Bear. There used to be woods burners. They tried to stop it all the time, and the woods burners would get out and get chased by hound dogs and they burned because the livelihood was changing. They had to get on a farm,
Mm-hmm.
and to get on a farm, you couldn't get out on the open lands.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't move your cattle out there.
Yeah. So as the fire starts disappearing, what starts happening on the landscape? Like what are some of the things that start changing, and how do things really shift from maybe the way that they used to be historically and for hundreds and thousands of years?
Yeah, consequences are profound over time. Now, the first few years, you might not, first decade or so, you wouldn't really notice, but we really notice now. And so the consequences are, a loss of sunlight to the forest floor. Okay, so that loses. If you lose sunlight, you lose plants' abilities to grow. So you lose plant diversity.
Mm-hmm. And you're losing that sunlight because now stuff is growing.
Yeah, we get
up.
60 to 80 inches of rain a year here in Arkansas, both in the Ozarks and the Ouachitas, just depending on the year. And so what happens is our woods can grow trees quickly, even though it's scabby out there. You can get 3 feet a year in growth from brush and shrubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oaks and pines take longer, but it closes in really quickly.
Yeah.
Becomes an ecosystem with 300 trees per acre now. And very little biodiversity and floristic diversity on the forest floor,
Mm-hmm.
with a duff layer that's anywhere from 6 inches to a foot of leaf litter and detritus, which then acts like a mat, right, that covers that plant life that's in the soil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it's insane.
Yeah. So you're losing sunlight, which we all know, if we remember science from 5th grade, plants need sunlight to grow.
Yeah.
So they're not growing like that, or you're losing that diversity.
Yep.
You have closed canopy. What else is happening?
Many more things, actually. It's a change in soil types, soil structure, lack of regeneration. This is an oak, shortleaf pine, oak, hickory dominant ecosystem overstory, right? All the major wildlife and plants and animals and mammals depend on a lot of hard mass, which is the acorns, soft mass, which are, persimmons and blueberries and huckleberries, and seeds. And so when you lose those things, you're also affecting those animals and
Mm-hmm.
and mammals, and the lack of regeneration in closed canopy ecosystems. So basically, we don't have the next forest out there. What's grown up is under the shortleaf pine oak forest is beech, maple, ash, hophorn beam, honey locust, all
Wait,
sorts.
say that again, because I've never heard that.
Okay.
We don't have the next forest out there, meaning what the forest is supposed to be.
Yeah.
If something were to happen and all those trees were to go away, say the oaks, the pines, and the hickories all got a blight,
Yeah.
those would be toast. They'd be done.
Well, so here's the thing. What happens is those trees, those acorns and seeds from shortleaf pine and oak need sunlight to generate.
Yeah.
And if they're out there sitting in the soil and not germinating,
Mm-hmm.
everything else is. And so what happens is if, say, you get a tornado and it becomes a type shift ecosystem, so the baby seeds will not germinate until they get sunlight, and you still have 20-foot tall maples out there that are just going to continue to grow. And so it's an ecosystem shift of a ecological type is
Wow.
what can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So you've got shifting of plant types, you got shifting of soil types, you've got plants, soils, the trees that animals are depending on, like the ones that you're mentioning. Certain animals are going to gravitate to those. So you're really shifting like the native things, and then I would think that you're creating opportunities for non-native species to then take hold when the natives are being suppressed.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It is, but we have endemic kind of invasives.
Okay.
We don't have a lot of invasives that are from outside, besides like Sericea lespedeza, and that's in the grasslands. But in our forest and our woodlands, it's not like there's some other tree that is sweeping through here like some places out west and in the southeast.
Yeah.
It's basically a law. It's the same species that have been here. It's just that the fire dependent ones, if they don't get fire, they're going to be quickly outcompeted by all the things that are here that don't love fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called messification, and it's happened all across the eastern seaboard where they've lost, a lot of oak forests across the eastern seaboard after the chestnut and all that. So, yeah, it becomes a beech maple dominant ecosystem is what the ecologists say.
Messification. What's the definition of that?
Yeah, that's a new term by one of the researchers at the Forest Service. Messification's the
Making a big mess out of things.
It's a messification, messified. It's a moist, becoming a moist forest, a
Okay.
moister ecosystem.
Okay.
Yep, a shade loving ecosystem, moss, ferns, that kind of thing, which is fine in places, north facing slopes and all of that. That's always been here.
Mm-hmm.
But in our fire maintained shortleaf pine oak ecosystems, losing fire, we can still move towards that ecosystem state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So around here, like when you go, now when you go out into like the Ozark National Forest and a lot of places, you're looking around and it's really hard to imagine that the place didn't always look like this, where you've got so many trees as far as you can see. It's thick, it's just closed, it's shady. And so now you're saying it's much more moist. The humidity is it's higher in these forests versus it used to be a much more drier climate, which I would think, changes the species of plants and animals that are going to be present in those places.
Yeah.
Which is why, we've done some stuff where we talk about like certain animals that now are not there, not present on the landscape. And I think about like the collared lizard and how that would have depended on glades and having these open areas. And then, you think about like the quail and stuff like that. And so what I guess my question around that is like, 1920s is when the fire started to be kind of like really rapidly being removed. How long did it take for these big impacts to start happening where you could actually not just like in the little margin see changes, but now it's like, oh my goodness, things are really changing rapidly and we don't have quail anymore. We don't have these lizards anymore.
Yeah.
We're seeing things completely different. How long did that take?
Yeah, I think Smokey the Bear was in the early 40s. Yep, and then there was a psychologist that did a campaign and a psychologist that wrote a paper about how to stop the fires and how to psychologically change people's minds to start fires. That was also in the 40s around that time. And so if you think about that, it took 40 to 50 years to, basically to stop all fires, but then for the ecosystem to really, really grow and mature and then start really having some pretty significant challenges. And those challenges are native borers, native insects, oak borers and then pine borers. And so when a ecosystem, shortleaf pine oak ecosystem gets too thick, we have episodic droughts, boom, boom. And we had one in 98, 99, 2000, a series of 3 droughts created a massive die-off here in the Ozarks. And that's what started all of this stuff in 2000. And so that was in my lifetime, that was a big episodic die-off, 500,000 acres across public and private land, so 500,000 acres of dead and dying trees, because the researchers said, they held a big symposium in Little Rock, and the results were from all the researchers was, it's stressed. There's too many trees per acre. We've had significant droughts, and there's not enough water to feed all these trees that shouldn't be here. And we've taken fire out of the ecosystem. So we need to bring fire back. And so that's really what started the trajectory of all the collaboratives here to start managing land. And so, yeah, it sounds doom and gloom of what's out there, but there's been a lot of work out there. Like all the WMAs look fantastic now.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
what are some of those other species that like started to disappear, plants, trees, things like that, that used to be maybe common that now aren't there anymore that we don't see?
Yeah, well, just drive on the roadsides and you'll see big blue stem, little blue stem, and a lot of flowers on the roadside ditches. But that's pretty much indicative of, we probably had 150 plant species per acre out there, in the forest, all over the place. And now we have like 8. Poison ivy is the predominant one.
Can you burn poison ivy off?
Yeah, you can.
All right, it's good to know.
Yeah, it doesn't get in your lungs, even though
Oh,
they
it doesn't?
Yeah, that's what they say.
I have always heard that.
Me too.
That's not true.
I don't think it is unless somebody can prove me wrong.
Someone's gonna be like,
Please do, because I burn it all the time. I've never been sick,
But you do get poison ivy. You are allergic to poison ivy otherwise.
yes, I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you
Interesting.
probably disproved it then.
Well,
Anecdotally.
Yeah, I can't say definitively,
Yeah.
but
Do not go inhale poison ivy smoke.
Yeah.
don't do that.
We are not
please.
Sorry,
recommending that.
I cut you off there.
Please.
Eight species poison ivy, and you're
Yeah.
right. You walk through the woods and it's like leaf litter and big trees.
Yeah, which is pollinators are the main thing right now, right? Like,
Mm.
we got to bring back the pollinators. Well, we had all the pollinators out there in the forest when we had open woodlands, sunlight on the ground, and
Mhm.
flower diversity.
Mhm.
The Game and Fish calls it groceries on the ground.
Mhm.
But yeah, lots of, like, for the birds, there's 15 bird species that we track in our restoration areas that are woodland dependent. Some of them are pretty, kind of species of concern.
Yeah.
That only have like 70,000 populations left, which is like bewick's wren. But like all the chuckwills, widows, and whippoorwills, they all need that open woodland condition.
Mm.
Summer tanagers, orchard orioles, just going off the top of my head, but there's about 15 to 20. Indigo buntings, rufous-sided towhees.
Now what? Rufus-sided hoohies?
Towhees, man.
Towhees? I never heard of that one.
Oh, come on.
The whippoorwill, the day that you can't go out into the Ozarks and hear a whippoorwill as you're sitting around a campfire, my heart will break.
Yeah.
Like that is a quintessential memory of mine growing up.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, I'm out, we're at the cabin, in the woods around the fire, and I just hear that whippoorwill firing off in the background.
Yeah.
And, oh man, it's just iconic.
I love it. Yeah, it's insane. It's so good.
Yeah. So those birds. So what makes a species like that woodland dependent? When you say that, like, what do they need? What are they when the woodland disappears? What are they not getting, and why is their population struggling?
Yeah, well, scientists know by species kind of like their breeding habitat. And so they know kind of how big of an area a bird needs in a breeding population to like be successful, and in what type of plant community they do that in. So ducks have a certain habitat. Closed canopy birds have a certain type of habitat. And woodland species need, a variety of open foraging techniques. We have the red cockaded woodpecker here in Arkansas. Huge success story. They need woodlands, open savanna, pine woodlands. Without fire, they go extinct. That's why they're endangered. Brown-headed nuthatches need open woodlands. So we try to track that by estimating the size of acres they need. And so we can say that, if we restore 50,000 acres, we can bring back, or we can maintain a viable population of, say, 300 breeding pairs of indigo buntings.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And what about the grasslands? I mean, we know turkeys, we know deer love it, we know quail.
Yeah.
Those are the big three.
Yeah.
What might I be missing in kind of the savanna grassland types, and then also I guess it is just savanna grasslands. You'll have more forbs in the forest. but
Prairies and
Yeah.
stuff.
prairie, grassland, savanna.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
For birds or just for all wildlife?
Just, all wildlife kind of generally.
Yeah, I would say the savanna grasses and woodland type of condition. It's a gradient, but the soft mass is super important. Like the berries, like huckleberries and blueberries, persimmons, and those things. They don't grow in the shade. They have a flower.
Mhm.
Anything that has a flower that fruits needs some light, a percentage of light. So that's hugely important for all the wildlife. Fox squirrels. You ever seen a fox squirrel in a closed canopy? Mostly they're out.
They're always on the edge.
Yep.
Always.
Yep, and they're pretty much declining across the entire range. So yeah, a lot of species have that woodland component in their life cycle.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say to be frank, I would say all of our, plants, bird species here, and except for a few, are fire codependent.
And that's just because of the history of this place.
Yeah.
That's remembering the history of this place and how the landscape used to look, and
Yep.
why those species are here to begin with.
Exactly. This ecosystem came on about 10,000 years ago, and these species co-evolved with that ecosystem.
And so all of this has rapidly changed within the last 100 years.
Pretty much.
So we think about, it's like 100 years to you, me, like the three of us seems like a long time because,
Yeah.
we'll probably not live to be 100. But that's such a short amount of time when you think about the thousands of years that came before that and how it all developed together and got to the place that it is and why we have the species that we have today. It's just, that's just a different mindset. It's a shift.
Yeah, if you drive around, you'll see, basically, if you don't mow your grass, it grows up right in your yard. If you don't brush hog it, it grows up more. And so literally we've lost, all of our prairies, all of our grasslands within 20 years, they're thickets and 20-foot tall timber. So yeah, it doesn't take long.
Yeah.
And the grass species have changed, right? I
Yeah.
mean, for the most part.
Yeah.
Maybe not in some of the WMA areas, but
Yeah.
with close to cities, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not looking at native grasses, I imagine.
You are not looking at native grasses. No. You have to go to natural areas to look at the native
find the grass,
grasses.
yeah.
The big blue stems, the little blue stems. And they're super beautiful and diverse. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this was all the interior highlands.
I know.
Buffalo were here. I mean, yeah, bison were in the Ozarks. They were in the Washtenaws. Woodland bison were around. So this place was so diverse and different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, it's really I can get going down this mindset of like, gosh, it's sad. It's like I wish and all of these species, the grasses, the flowers, the prairies, the mixed woodlands, the different types of birds, like, my gosh, it was such a beautiful place. And our humans came in and like put our big footprint on it, and we're like, nah. I mean, and nobody did it intentionally, I don't think, but it's just, I feel like we at some point we stepped out of our role in nature and we started playing this different role and started looking at it like that, of like, oh, nature's over there and we're gonna develop and build cities and do other things and not be a part of it. And so I think about that, but the turning point for me and where I like have to have hope is looking at where it's still recoverable and where we are doing work like what you do with fire and working with the state and different agencies to put fire back on the landscape where it used to be. Are you seeing changes? Are you seeing positive benefits come back to the landscape?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like when I first was working on this stuff 20-something years ago, no agency had a burn team, a burn crew. And now the Game and Fish has, a full-time crew, a fire manager. They're burning almost 30,000, 40,000 acres a year in their WMAs. They have a desired condition, ecological condition on where they're going with how they want to manage their ecosystems. So all the agencies and Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, all have a kind of a vision of through forest management plans or whatever, that what they're striving for the ecosystem, and that's ecosystem resiliency and trying to maximize plant and animal diversity, both for hunting, but for also the birds, the neotropical birds. We get so many neotropical birds coming through here, and they need this habitat. Not to mention, the monarch butterflies in the fall need all of that that fall pollination that you see out there in the yellow flowers that you're seeing right now out on the landscape, and the wing stems that are coming up now too. So yeah, it's insane. And now, like I said earlier at the beginning of the cast, we're total is everybody's burning over 400,000 acres a year. A lot of that's on the forests, both the Ozarks and Washtenaws. But man, I drive around and through these places that I help trying to get it figured out, and it looks beautiful out there. There's a lot of land out there, 700 probably acres, that get burned within a 5-year period. So there's a lot of fire going on out there in the springtime for sure. And so it's not all lost, guys.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
I love that.
Yeah.
And are we burning more all the time? Like, do you feel like everyone's on the same page and we're like, yes, we got to do more. We got to do more. Like, you feel like that's happening?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Everybody's trying to squeeze as much as they can out of the lemon.
Yeah.
There's only a certain amount of burn days, and everything the conditions have to be right. The wind has to be the direction you want. You don't want to smoke in a town, a school, a highway. So there's a lot that goes into planning and implementing a controlled burn for the safety of people. You don't want to step on people's toes and try to, put a bunch of smoke in the air and burn during hunting season, which is a really good time to burn unless you've done your homework with the communities in that area that hunt those areas. So there's still a lot more work to be done. And I see opportunity. I kind of have the big pictures. A lot of other people do, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to get more acres treated than we're currently getting treated.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have an idea of how much private land is burned on a yearly basis?
It's not much. Yeah.
So it really is kind of up to the government right now, the
Yeah.
AGFC and Nature Conservancy and its partners to get it done.
Yeah, it's a few thousand. Maybe
Okay.
I don't have those numbers in front of me, but probably now private is also included in the stats because of timber, timber companies in the South. So if
Okay.
you just thought of farmland, farm owners, that kind of thing, excluding that out, I would guess easily under 10,000 acres.
Yeah.
So really not much.
Well, not much considering 80% of Arkansas is private owned.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Relative to the total.
It's hard.
pie.
It's hard
Yeah.
to do a controlled burn. You got to have people, resources, plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are resources, and I know I've learned about this in doing the podcast, and there's prescribed burn associations.
Yeah.
There's, like you mentioned, the private lands division within the Game and Fish, and for our Missouri listeners, I know that there's activities up there too and resources. So I think that, yeah, we're trying to give the tools to people to figure out how to do it, and the education, the learn to burn courses, all that stuff is good, and hopefully that continues to just pick up steam, and,
Yeah.
and people start burning more on private.
Absolutely. We have nowhere to go but up,
Yeah.
you know? And I look forward to seeing us do what some of the other states are doing, you know, a lot of private land burning, co-op burning. Oklahoma's doing a lot of that. Texas is doing a lot of that. A lot of places where there's big farms that still have around us that still have native grasslands that the farmers get together and burn their grasslands off. So yeah, anyways, we can have those types of models here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
I love it. It gives me hope.
It does me too.
Yeah.
I guess the only way is up when you let it get as bad as it got in the last 100 years. It's
Yeah.
like you had the peak and then it got just really wild for a bit. And now, thankfully, through work like you do and the people's recognition, like this is not how the woods are supposed to be.
Yep.
We're wanting to turn it around. And we talk to people all the time who they're like, man, me and my dad we got 25 acres and like we want to burn it.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes.
Like, that is,
Do it.
that's the start. Like let's go do it. So
Yeah, I love it too. I think, going through it at we have more trees than we've ever had.
Yep.
Right. You mentioned it maybe used to be like 50 to 70 trees per acre.
Mhm.
Now you said 300.
Yeah,
is what we're
good
about.
memory. Yeah.
And we're losing species at a rate that to lose one species is a tragedy in itself if it's not replaced. It's like that species now no longer exists. No one for the rest of history of time will see that species again. It's just that's sad in itself. We're changing not the topography, but the landscape, the ecosystem, the plants that are present. And I'm just like, man, what? Like, we gotta wake up and realize like we can do some things to fix this.
Yeah.
But if we just sit back and we keep doing what we're doing, like we're gonna lose stuff that we're not gonna be able to get back, and our kids aren't gonna maybe know what a whippoorwill is. You know what I mean? And that alone is enough to fix it all, right? Get the quail back in the landscape. So
I'd agree.
yeah, man, I love this topic. Thank you for sharing with us, and I've enjoyed spending some time with you talking about this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For our listeners, y'all make sure you check out the Holler, and we'll have conversations about burning and land management and all that kind of stuff there. And send this podcast to a buddy.
We've got a few land managers in the.
We do.
In
you
the
might
Holler.
actually get some help in the Holler. if
We've
you're
got
like,
a
I
guy
wanna
in there
burn.
who knows what he's talking about.
And send this podcast to a friend, somebody who loves or maybe even hates Smokey the Bear, somebody who needs to think about what it looks like to burn some wooded areas. And we'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.